I love video games, but I hate the games industry. 2024 was a pretty miserable year to care about games, with layoffs, busted releases, studio closures, and worrying acquisitions around the corner every month. Every time it felt like it couldn't get worse, it did. It was a pretty depressing year, and it was hard not to feel like the industry was taking its last breaths. All this is to say, thank fuck for indie games. There's something special about indie games. The fact that a handful of people can make an entire game out of their garage with enough passion and skill is kind of astounding, and it's led to an industry booming with life. Thoughtful, emotional, and creative experiences are cropping up faster than most people can read through them. So I figured to celebrate the end of the year, fuck, this video is really late, I'd make a video appreciating some of the best titles of the year that made 2024 the year of the indie. The first thing you need to know about Echo Point Nova is its ADHD, the video game. From the opening moments, the player is given a gun, a hoverboard, and a grappling hook and told to have fun. It doesn't waste any time trying to lecture you with unnecessary lore, nor does it hold your hand in tutorials. The game immediately throws you into the action and lets you play with the tools it's given you, and it rules. Fans of games like Doom Eternal and Ultra Kill will feel right at home with Nova's pace of combat in that you are always moving. Standing still for even a moment results in a quick death as enemies will overwhelm you, forcing you to constantly hook, skate, and slide your way around arenas in a way that makes the player feel like an action hero. This is aided by physics and momentum so finely tuned, it allows for a brilliant movement system with an extremely high skill ceiling. One of the biggest positives of Echo Point Nova is its restraint. It's a brief game with just the right amount of content and minimal unneeded variety in that content. It knows why you're here and doesn't waste time with unnecessary distractions. The game gives you a large map scattered with floating islands filled with enemies to fight, and moving from objective to objective never stops being fun because of how perfectly they nail the feeling of the combat. There are games on this list that are beautiful works of art, games that will move you, games that tell brilliant stories. Echo Point Nova is not one of those games. It's a game where you skate around Sky Islands and shoot a bunch of robots while having the time of your life, and I think that is just as worthy of praise. Grunn is marketed as a normal game about gardening, and that's exactly what it is. It's a standard, normal game about gardening. You cut grass, and trim hedges, and nothing out of the ordinary happens. It's simply a pleasant, cozy game about the joys of garden maintenance. I may have left out some details about this game. Alright, I didn't entirely lie. Grunn is a normal game about gardening for about 10 minutes, before things start going wrong. Grunn is a psychological horror game where you play as a gardener stuck in a time loop and try to figure out what is actually going on in this garden. It's very Outer Wilds in this way, as the player experiences wild things happening in a loop, only to understand what causes it far later in their playthrough. This makes for a pretty unsettling experience, with Grunn heavily utilizing the fear of the unknown to upset you. The town grows foggy with time, the people have distorted faces and speak in a foreign tongue, and the land feels ordinary yet impossible, and you can't shake the feeling that you're being watched. The appeal of Grunn is in learning to master the time loop and understanding the cause and effect of each choice you make. On your first run, you'll be stumbling around trying to do your job, terrified of all the weird shit going on around you, but by your last, you understand exactly where to go and what to do. It's not the best horror game on this list, but learning the ins and outs of this wacky, spooky little town made for an extremely memorable experience, and solving some of the puzzles had my jaw on the floor. If you enjoy short but memorable puzzle games or complicated time loop games, Grunn is a strong recommendation. Dungeons of Hinterberg is this list's certified cozy game. It follows a young woman trying to escape her miserable office job 9 to 5 by taking a vacation to Hinterberg, a small town in the hills with a strange phenomenon that has turned it into a tourist hotspot. Fantasy. Small dungeons have appeared around the town, and with them, magic spells, with people visiting from all over the world to live out their Dungeons & Dragons fantasies in real life. The game is split into a handful of sections and blends different game design tropes into one experience, featuring dungeon crawling, combat, puzzle solving, time management, exploration, and even social sim aspects. The player is given a limited number of in-game days to spend as they wish, and it creates a great sense of freedom. You are in charge of where to go and what to do on any given day, and that makes the decisions you make much more meaningful. No matter what you do, each pillar of the game feeds back into one another, creating constant progression that keeps you hooked from session to session. Dungeons of Hinterberg isn't particularly masterful at any one thing, Its combat, puzzle solving, exploration, and social sim elements all feel weaker than other bigger games, but the way it blends all of it into one experience makes it good, and the atmosphere makes it great. This game's best accomplishment is how it's able to make the player feel like they're on a digital vacation. The game's calendar system works as a gentle reminder that, like all holidays, this experience won't last, and you have to enjoy all of your limited days. Sometimes that means seeing and experiencing new things and meeting new people. Other times, it's enough to simply hike up a trail and watch the day pass you by, taking in the scenery and enjoying the moment. In 1982, UFO Soft released the LX video game system along with Barbuta. It was a bit of a niche console, only releasing in some European countries, but it was a modest success with an impressive library of over 50 solid titles. That library has been compiled within UFO 50 for us to enjoy, and I am lying to you. The LX console does not exist, nor does UFO Soft. They're fictional entities created by indie studio Mossmouth, developers of Spelunky. UFO 50 is a compilation of 50 retro games that aren't real, but damn do they feel like it, with each game feeling like a charming piece of game design from masters. To clarify, UFO 50 is 50 different retro-inspired games compiled into one package. And notice I said games, not mini-games. That's because these titles aren't short gimmicks, they're impressively large games that you can sink multiple hours into, and there are so many games like this. The variety of games is really impressive. You've got complicated puzzle games, chill puzzle games, tough roguelikes, adventure games, brilliant strategy games, racing games, a sports fighting game, and even a whole ass JRPG. They aren't all winners, but even the jankiest games have a charmingly retro shittiness to them, and games I found repulsive are probably someone else's favourite. That alone would be enough for UFO 50 to be a fantastic experience, but it's all wrapped in an oddly effective meta-narrative surrounding the fictional company of UFO Soft. You really get a sense of time passing as the games become more and more sophisticated, as if the fictional developers are improving, and the small bits of trivia the game gives you are delightful. UFO 50 is a genuine miracle, the kind of game that feels like it shouldn't exist, but I'm so happy it does. It isn't my favourite game of the year, but it's undoubtedly the best value for money on this list. It's 50 games for the price of one. Just go buy it! One of the greatest joys of loving indie games is seeing the progression of a studio from title to title. Some teams do the same thing repeatedly and hone their craft, while others go for a solid variety of titles. However, I've never seen a turn quite like Red Candle Games and Nine Souls. Their previous work, Devotion, is one of my favourite horror games ever, for its excellent atmosphere and environmental storytelling. So a Sekiro-inspired Metroidvania focused on boss fights was the last thing I expected, and yet, here we are. The first thing you should know about Nine Souls is that it isn't a particularly great Metroidvania. The map is large, but quite linear, and the abilities unlocking new paths are few and far between. However, I genuinely don't care, because every other aspect of this game is phenomenal. The platforming is fantastic, its environments are extremely satisfying to navigate, the atmosphere is top-notch, the soundtrack bangs, the world building is interesting, and the characters are great. If this game didn't even have combat, it would still earn its spot on this list, and yet it does. Nine Souls has some of the greatest boss fights I've seen since Sekiro, with a huge variety of incredible, well-designed bosses that feel equally distinct to fight and satisfying to overcome. The entire combat system is built around a parry that feels incredible to land, and learning the patterns of these bosses leads to a dance-like quality that very few games are able to capture. The first time you roll up to a new boss, you'll get your ass beat, but after a while, you start to see the patterns and it becomes a beautiful dance. If you're a sicko like me that enjoys spending hours on a single boss fight, memorizing the rhythm of the fight to overcome the challenge, Nine Souls is a must-play. I like to think that my writing has been pretty eloquent so far throughout this video, so now I'm going to try and continue this style while recommending a game full of dick jokes. And when she saw the signs of it... Thank Goodness You're Here is a short game where you play as a little dude wandering around a wacky town helping people solve problems. Your interaction with this town is limited to walking, jumping, and slapping, and this is because the core of the experience is the comedy.
I'm looking for tits.
The game has a mix of absurdist and adult humor, with a joke per minute rate that would put the best comedy television to shame, and it all feels distinctly British in a way that sets it apart from other comedy games. The structure of the game is interesting. You wander around the town in a concise loop with things changing and stories progressing each time you revisit a location. Sometimes this is a silly background detail, and other times this is the main objective, but it's always something surprising and funny, like this dude who really likes toast, or this guy selling bricks? Yeah, that's the kind of game this is. It's silly, it doesn't overstay its welcome, nor take itself too seriously, and it puts a smile on my face. Survival horror games aren't exactly a dime a dozen nowadays. There's plenty of games coming out being labelled as survival horror, but you'd be lucky to find one that isn't either a remake of a classic or leading into action horror territory, sometimes even both. Despite being pretty good games, these aren't really what I'm looking for. Classics like the original Resident Evil trilogy are near and dear to my heart, and that's why Crow Country works so well for me. Crow Country is a gorgeous retro throwback to an era long gone. You're placed into a phenomenal recreation of an old PS1 survival horror game, and the commitment to this premise is astounding. The environments are carefully constructed with a harsh limit on pixels. Your character stumbles around with awkward tank controls, the music sounds condensed yet ambitious, and even the story is written with a charming 90s camp. This phenomenal commitment to presentation enticed me enough on its own, but Crow Country really surprised me with an extremely impressive sense of atmosphere. This abandoned amusement park feels wrong from the very first step you take in, and it only gets more and more uncomfortable with obtuse puzzles and cruel enemy placement. Okay, the first few times you go through this room, it's one of the only completely safe places, and then out of nowhere, this fucking thing appears. The dichotomy of nostalgic joy and uncomfortable terror shouldn't work so well together, but Crow Country nails this unique vibe. It's a curious mixture of hope and dread. Maybe everything will be okay, and maybe it won't. If I had to distill the appeal of a roguelike down to a short equation, it would be OP builds multiplied by complete unfair randomness, and it's what has led so many to get completely addicted to the genre. Not me, though. Imagine that. Where a game like Hades succeeds in how it pushed the roguelike formula to new areas, telling an impactful story through the framing of a run-based game, Balatro instead dials the core attributes of itself to fucking 11, and it makes for a game that is mind-melting levels of fun. The premise of Balatro is simple. It's the basic concept of poker adapted into a deck-building roguelike a la Slay the Spire or Inscription. But where those games take a more tactical approach, Balatro leans much more into complete chaos that can range from extremely frustrating to exhilarating depending on how Lady Luck favors you. This might sound unpleasant, and it for sure can be. I've had my fair share of runs that struggle to get off the ground. But when you get the right combination of Joker cards and you make an unbeatable build to shred through the entire game, it's an absolutely unforgettable high. This chaotic, unbalanced minefield is an addictively wild ride once you fully embrace it, helped by the visual and sound design being absolutely incredible. I know poker with power-ups is a strange concept, but stranger still is that it works. Like, really works. This is one of those, I'll just play a quick run before bed. What do you mean it's 4 AM kind of games, and I'm far from proud of my hour counts. Productivity is overrated anyway. Balatro is immortal. If there's one game in this video you've heard about already, it's Mouthwashing. Wrong Organ's breakout success has blown up online, gaining over 15,000 Steam reviews with an overwhelmingly positive rating, and it's completely deserved. Mouthwashing follows a space delivery crew struggling to survive after a devastating crash halfway through a year-long voyage. The story unfolds non-linearly, with a complicated series of events that you're dropped in and out of, left to piece together some semblance of a cohesive timeline in your head. This makes for an incredibly unique story, where the player is unaware of who to trust and what has transpired, until everything is revealed in a horrific and disturbing final act. Despite being a game mostly focused on narrative, Mouthwashing justifies its video game status by playing with many core pillars of game design. You do and say things void of context, and only learn of repercussions after the fact, disgusting the player and heightening impact in a way only a game can. The small collection of rooms these characters call home has a claustrophobia to them. giving the feeling that you can't ever truly be alone with cramped hallways and low ceilings that become familiar but never comfortable. The only thing scarier than endlessly drifting through space is the people around you. Their fears, their insecurities, their mistakes, their ambitions, and their choices will remind you of the horrifying reality that we are at the mercy of one another. Mouthwashing's biggest villain isn't a ghost, aliens, or monsters. It's the flaws of people. The laziness, the harshness, the incompetence, and the downright evil that exists in the people around you, and how the choices people make affect one another, even if they're made with good intentions. In a brief 2 hours, Mouthwashing is able to create one of the most compelling and disturbing horror experiences I've had in a long time. An experience so expertly vile, it's sure to leave a bad taste in your mouth. This has been an extremely positive video so far, so I hope you understand just how high the bar is when I tell you that I've saved the best for last. "1000 Times Resist" is a science fiction, narrative-focused game taking place in a post-apocalyptic setting where aliens have appeared and spread a disease that has wiped out all people with the exception of one girl, a second-generation immigrant living in Canada named Iris. Generations later, you play as one of many clones of Iris trying to create a new society. You're known as Watcher, and it's your duty to delve into the memories of Iris, now known as the All-Mother, to uncover her history in order to learn from it. What follows is a wild story full of incredible twists and phenomenal character writing. However, it isn't the events of 1000 Times Resist that matter, but what those events mean and how they connect to one another. Small, seemingly insignificant lines of dialogue take on an entirely new meaning later on with new context.
I can't be a picture like Dad. I'm sorry, Joe.
And it makes for a story satisfying to experience and to think about. The story of 1000 Times Resist is ambitious, with a plethora of sci-fi concepts and proper nouns thrown at you from the first minutes. But with each line of dialogue, the characters diegetically give you new information about the setting and history of this place. Phrases like
Ekioma Watcher
and
hair to hair
sound like sci-fi gibberish until they click into place naturally like they're real terms, and it connects you to the characters. This is great, because these are characters you will want to connect with. Watcher, Healer, Fixer, BBF, Noah, and all the other sisters are characters that feel so distinct and memorable despite looking identical, and seeing them experience the insane series of events that transpires ranges from genuinely funny to devastating.
Doing my time in a pressed white collar, I was sipping my juice from a box when I saw her. She walks in clean, a straw in a wrapper, no crime on record when she gave me a holler.
These incredible characters are supported by phenomenal writing that feels so realistic and human in ways that range from extremely funny to downright cutting. There's a precision to the dialogue. Like absolutely every line feels important to better understanding not only this world and these people, but the themes of the story as a whole. This is the game's biggest strength. Not once does it tell you what it's about or what you should feel. It shows you what it's about and makes you feel those feelings through dialogue that turns good characters into great ones. A story about how the future generations inherit and interpret what we leave behind for them. 1000 Times Resist is the kind of game that belongs in a time capsule. The only thing harder than leaving is deciding what to bring with you and what to leave behind, because not everything can fit in the backpack. The most impressive thing is how it succeeds not in spite of financial limitations, but directly because of them, with a story that weaves any and all financial constraints into its narrative in a way that actually enhances the experience. Can't afford to make dozens of character models? Well, everyone's a clone of the same person. Can't afford to make all those models constantly animated? They don't have to move. You're jumping between different memories in time. Can't afford to make too many environments? Most of the game takes place in one area with a few others here and there. This isn't bad or lazy design, it's resourcefulness and it's genius. In an industry where every AAA game has to sell dozens of millions of copies to even have a chance of making money, 1000 Times Resist makes an unforgettable experience, forged by limitations but surpassing them nonetheless. It isn't just a brilliant story, it's a beautiful sign that the barrier of entry for creating games is only going to get lower, and the industry will be okay. All this is to say, thank fuck for indie games.
So our kind of full-time team is 4 people, and we have 2 part-time and various other kind of people helping us. But it was good timing. It was kind of acknowledging that we have all the tools in front of us to try and translate our performance practice into games, and that it wouldn't be extremely laborious.